So hi, I'm Shruti Ramlingaiah, curator of the exhibition, group exhibition um, of that, what we do not often look at the gallery Dotwalk in Gurgaon. We are here as part of a virtual program in a brief conversation with artists about their art practice and the works that are part of the show. This show is on view till 15th of June at the gallery Dotwalk in Gurgaon. So yeah, I welcome Veda uh, to start uh, and begin discussing and the conversation about her works. Uh, so, hi Veda.
Hi.
So, I would like to start with this, uh, you know, the publication work that is part of uh, the show. It's a A5 size book titled "Drawing from a Garden." I wanted to know how and when did you begin this work, and if you could tell us a backdrop before it took a shape into a publication or a book.
It's actually something I think because I was traveling, I was during the pandemic, those pandemic years, 2021, 22. And I was in Kerala for a long time, and then I was in Chennai for a long time. So I was mostly, to continue work, I mostly could only continue on a sketchbook. So it began during my time in Kerala. It was there for about 8 months, and so I was drawing trees, and I mean making drawings of the land that we live in there, and that's where this form of the tree trunk kind of began, where I was suddenly like I initially it started out as an accident, and then I started noticing things with the movement of those, the way they grow, and the textures, and how that was represented in the charcoal medium or a dry pastel medium. So I was interested in that texture on the paper. So then it started with that, and then it continued into then I was in Chennai for another 7 months. So then it continued there. Then came back to Greater Noida after a year away. So it continued here. So it was something that helped create continuity through these travels and this movement, because I did not have a studio space or a stable space that I was working from. So it was this sketchbook and then limitations of time and movement and stuff. So I just started, it's a process that began like that. And then, I mean, through that drawing process, these ideas or thoughts would come to would come to mind about how the tree is growing, what has happened, where an understanding of where a branch has been cut or pruned or fallen, and then how it moves in relation to that when it continues to grow, or how it kind of adapts to that change. So gradually, the focus was on that. And then I found myself choosing trees that particularly had that. So with each of the drawings, there is always, I would say, like a particular thing that I'm actually looking at for which they are chosen. So that's how it began. And then, I mean, the process that those so they were just a lot of drawings. Like I think I have 2 3 sketchbooks of them, and I was thinking of how I can also bring in those ideas that were coming to mind alongside it. And I had all of these, like somehow it needs to come together. I want to find a way to bring those thoughts forward. They're not just sketches, they're something else, that are doing a little bit more than merely being studies. There's something else that's going on, and I need to find ways to express that. So for my freelance projects, I was doing some layout design work, and I was on InDesign, and I had to design a few books. So so I was in that flow. I think 2 months I was designing those books, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute, I could probably try and bring these drawings into InDesign and see if I can put text alongside it and turn it into a book. So that's kind of how it became a book. It was through that freelance engagement also, and it was through this, okay, I need to bring it all together. And then it kind of was an abstract idea or an abstract vision of how I bring these thoughts and drawings together. And then I thought, okay, a book is a simple way to do it. And I can do it immediately. So I just did it like that. So yeah, so this was maybe, I think must have done it late 2022, early 2023, or late 23, early 24, about a year ago at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, uh, there's a book, and there's also this larger work, Charcoal on Paper, which
Yeah.
is titled "The Skin is the Largest Organ,"
Yeah.
which is also like it's a it's a continuation of the same work that are coming out. It's almost like coming out of the book, but also as you just now mentioned, it is also part of how you were working and simultaneously thinking about a certain aspect of the tree. But
Yeah.
in case of this work, it also brings one a little more closer to the work in the terms of how the work is. In the first case, the scale is larger, the scale and the format of it. It also compels one to think of somehow neglected kind of parts, especially in this case the thorns. That is the case with the silk cotton tree. Um, and then especially in its developing years. But how did it all started, like when you depicted this, how is this depiction coming along, and what is it about the trunk that really intrigues you?
So the thing, the one like huge difference from the drawings that are in the book and even some of the other sketches is that those happen because they're a smaller scale. They happen in an impulse, almost in a single kind of stroke and a flow of like the hand moves like that, and it kind of, so it's very quick, and that engagement also, it's like it's something that happens very quickly, and and it's also because of the scale that allows that. Here I was thinking of how I could bring in, because I also have another mode of working where I do this very detailed ballpoint pen drawings of small objects that are blown up into detail. So I wanted to kind of mix the two, where this same I use the charcoal, willow charcoal, that medium, that dry medium of that, and the tree, use this tree trunk surface alone because of these thorns. In this particular case, I thought, okay, it would be really something to blow it up, because it's a chilling kind of, I mean, it's there are two trees, there are several of them here, because it's the silk cotton tree. The seed sort of flies and lands, and it just grows, and it grows very quickly. In 2-3 years, this has become a full, like 20 feet almost, or at least 15 feet. So it was that scale that I wanted to bring out in the drawing, and that texture of that thorn, because you can't even touch it, and it's automatic. Like you see a tree, you kind of lean on it for support, and several times I've done that, and it it sort of hurts you. So, and so it kind of, it comes from that also, like what is, you can't even touch it, even accidentally, even like a gentle, it's like that hostile. So then I got into looking at what it is about, I mean, why these thorns exist. And it's not necessary that all silk cotton trees have the same amount of thorns. So that is something I want to get into, like what is it that determines how much they have. So I tried to get into that, and then I learned about the like the banyan and all of them. They're a strangler fig sort of species, and they all, in the forest, it's basically competing for sunlight. This one grows really tall, and it's the thorns are a way for it to prevent the strangler figs from sort of taking over its surface, because the strangler fig basically grows on other trees, it grows on the branches of other trees, and then eventually it consumes the tree, killing it. And that is also in an effort to reach sunlight in the forest. So I just thought that all of this was, I mean, it's like basically a hostile skin that is protecting itself for survival, and, thinking of self-defense and these organic modes of self-defense in this way. And in some sense also, like at the back of my mind, or even the forefront of my mind, is all of this war that is going on now, and this whole notion of self-defense, and what self-defense is, and weapons, and that kind of genocidal sort of killing, versus like this organic self-defense, which is just worn on the skin. And the skin is the first zone of penetration, and then after that, the defenses that any body sort of comes up with in order to then attack the invader, so to speak. I mean, all of these things were on my mind. I mean, it's also like just a bunch of associations, I would say. It isn't necessarily this is what the work is about, but they're all like these thoughts. Sometimes the act of drawing is happening for a different reason, and the thinking is doing something else also. So it's all like parallel. And it's hard to say what is what, in a way.
Yeah, also when you're talking about the self-defense or how it protects itself from I mean, the thorns help it kind of do that.
Yeah.
Most of your works have this titles also are quite something which speaks of, a sense about feel, say about touch or the taste, especially the titles like sour, bitter, astringent, or towards pain or towards light. These are the other larger work compared to those of the other lot in the show. So I think that is also something which kind of envelopes into the whole idea of the bodily or that whole thing that you're just talking about. Is that something like that? Like the titles kind of also draws you in.
Yeah. Those are kind of, I think, for me, the titling also acts is a way for me to create that entry point. Also, like to say, this is why I'm looking at this, and this is what brought me to this tree, and or to draw this particular thing. So, like that sour, bitter, astringent. I mean, that is something again. That's a kind of an afterthought, but it's basically the fruit that the tree bears and the flavor of the fruit, and that's the description of amla. So it's very simple. The logic of that title is in a way very simple, but I just thought it was those three words coming one after the other was, it does something. So it was a play on that, basically. And the one towards pain is to do with the lopping off of one particular branch, and how the tree kind of is bent and warped in that. Is it that one that's called towards? I mean, yeah, which one was
It's the
called?
one which is bent,
Yeah, yeah,
right
yeah,
to
yeah,
bent. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I
And
think the light is the pestle one.
the mango one, yeah. So
Yeah,
there
the mango.
yeah, because it's surrounded by these coconut trees, and it kind of grows, and it's trying to, reach towards sunlight, basically, because it's growing in the midst of all of these much taller trees, and it's shorter. So there, the mango tree also grows differently in relation to the trees around it. So it's that. So each one is kind of indicating, in that sense, what
Hmm.
the tree is trying to do from what I see through the experience of drawing them.
I think to kind of extend that a little further into the two smaller works, and now that we're also talking about you're also telling about this extending towards light or growing towards light. The two smaller work are not really singular in a way, but it kind of places it into the same image of the tree, the recurring image. But then the tree and the gum bichromate prints are essentially, around the place or the village called Pattayam in Kerala.
Pattayam. Yeah,
Pattayam. Yeah. So, especially the work titled "The Wilderness," it is something which is quite contradictory to the other, the work that we are just talking about. So, if you could also talk about the place or the regions that you live and work between, or the work kind of happens there, but not really so focused in thought sometimes, right? So if you could talk about these regions a little more, because you have lived there for a while now, be it Greater Noida, where Chennai and other places.
And I think like the gum bichromate prints, basically they are images from my father's side, my father's land, and that's where we stay when we go there. And it's a very different landscape. It's a much compared to the drier regions of even here, though here, like in Greater Noida, here I'm in among wetlands, but I also think of the relationship to these different lands when I think of like different contexts that I'm living and working from. I also think of the role that water plays in those places differently. And it's like whether there's an excess of water or a scarcity of water, like Baroda is also an important part of my movements. So, the dryness and then the wetness that you feel in Kerala. And the entire duration that I was there, that year it was raining a lot. So it was raining pretty much for eight months. And that was a very intense period because all my technology, all of that started giving up because of the humidity or the moisture that went into it. Everything, laptop crashed, this crashed, one after the other. And so it came that those images are kind of, to my mind, they're kind of iconic images that stand in contrast to the city sort of landscape, where and because that is our land, we've kind of let it grow wild. Especially my father, it just grows. So it's kind of closer to a forest than it is a garden. It is not really a garden, but it becomes a garden in a sense because it is private property, I suppose. So it's not really a forest, but it's just everything just grows, and anything that grows is allowed to grow in a sense. At the most, little bit minor cleaning up when it needs to happen, just in order to get across, perhaps. But besides that, so that kind of it's to me, it's just like a very stark contrast to where I live here in Greater Noida, where the trees, there is an insistence on the pruning of these trees. You have to cut the branches of the trees, can only grow up to 15 feet. You can only get rid of the branches because there are too many leaves falling. There is too much this, there is too, so it was that contrast. And that's kind of where I come from, in a sense of Kerala, and that, let it be sort of thing. And that attitude versus this. And that difference, and that's kind of, I think, what all of these works and they're coming together is also trying to address, like what happens if you just leave it, and what happens when it's controlled. And the difference the difference in both. And even like there's no, like, in several trees, there's no distinction between what's what. They're all one because it's an ecosystem, you know whereas these individual trees become individual trees because they're completely alienated from each other, alienated from the soil that they're growing in, because it's not necessarily native to that region. It's all like ornamental, it's this, it's that. So that difference, it doesn't, yeah, those are the differences that I'm thinking about and slowly trying to get to a place of addressing, I would say. So I don't know if I answered the question about the different places, but
Yeah, altogether, it was also, you answered it because it was also about, the contrast that it brings. It's more like, having something closer, but also, as you said, it's not a garden. It's more like you are inside the forest. So you are the insider, like, not at the fringes, really inside the space, into the density, rather. So it's that kind of contrast. That was something that, interesting to also look at the difference and what it brings to, in terms of ecosystem, or in terms of also looking at different places in the context of, as you said, at some places, certain places, the way places are the trees are dealt with, and some places where Veda is a visual artist based in Greater Noida, and her practice is multidisciplinary that spans between drawing, photography, video, and tech. And she's done a master's from Shivnad University, and undergraduate diploma in art and design from Sushi School of Art, Bengaluru, and BA in anthropology and psychology from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. So thank you, Veda. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For signing in. Yeah.